la! Your train vacation to Malaysia starts from rupees 24,999 only with GT Holidays, South India's #1 travel brand.
Hi Vikram,
Hello, Maddie. Nice.
how are you?
Very good. Good to see you.
So, let's just begin with looking back at your career, right? So, you begin with Udaan. Today, I want you to look back at your films, the 6 films, today, from today's viewpoint. What maybe that came out exactly the way I wanted to. Know that some parts didn't quite work. Okay, that's something I'd like to forget. I don't want you to say the last thing, hopefully. But yeah, Udaan.
I saw bits of it recently. I went to the FTI to do a workshop. I saw bits of it recently, and there was moments when I'm looking back and saying, "Oh my God, there's slightly, it's a little overwrought, and there's some stuff there." But the moment I watched more than 2 minutes of it, I was hooked. I was into it, and I'm like, that's actually like, I think there's some very powerful storytelling happening, which I'm very proud of. And I think that yeah, but it was. I think the person today would have made the film very differently. Would have maybe been, and maybe that's not a good thing. I think that the fact that it's a little bit more front foot than I might have played today, I think, or maybe in a different sort of way. Or maybe,
How would the person, today's Vikram, have made it?
I think it would have been a little bit more refined on the performances, I feel.
Okay.
In certain places. I feel in certain places the performances might be a bit, but that's just me.
Yeah, but I don't know, when I saw it maybe like last year, everything that the music, the performances, the emotional honesty of everything just pretty much was like how I remembered it. Because sometimes you're at a certain stage of life when you watch a film and it really hooks you, and then 10 years pass, and then you're in a different stage of life, and sometimes you're like, it's not that you hate it or something, but you react to it a little differently. But this was like, I could almost feel certain emotions that I felt in the theater. And I think that's a keeper, It's
No, it did. And like I'm saying, if I hold on for 2 minutes more, and I was just like, then I'm just over it. I'm not seeing it critically. I'm not seeing it as a director. I'm not seeing it as somebody looking at your own work from that kind of stuff. I was into it as a viewer, and I think that's testament to the film. I think it's testament to the material of the film, for sure.
Right. And then Lootera. I remember you telling me at some point, I don't know whether it was before the film or after the film, that this is something that you wanted to do because you wanted to show the industry that I'm not just this little indie, whatever, that kind of filmmaker, that I could make a big film as well. Remember that, right? So
I get prouder and prouder of Lootera every day, in the sense that I think when I was making it, it was, yes, it was a bigger film. I was working at that point in time with Ranveer and Sonakshi, so there was a sense that you're going bigger from the indie film into a larger movie. But part of the back of my head is like, oh my God, I'm making an expensive art movie. It's also the little voice at the back of my head going like that. There are things, I mean, if I had to go back, I wouldn't change anything except for like a few storytelling beats. I would like change, like say, okay, let's put this here, let's put that there. But I think it was a film, it was made in very difficult circumstances for me personally and for the team. But I think I think today I can look back and say, okay, I'm very proud of that movie.
right, prouder than Udaan?
From a craft perspective, yes.
Right. And I love the music.
Yeah, music
it's just something is amazing. That Sawarlu, something I listen to.
It's amazing.
It's like a go-to song for me every once in a while. It's not just because of the music, but also the words. Just such a beautiful, song. It reminds me of the Neeraj and S.D. Burman combination, if you will.
Yeah.
It's that lovely zone, It's like then you made Trapped.
Yes.
Yeah.
Trapped was a knee-jerk reaction. I was trying so hard to make Bhavesh Joshi. And I'd gone through multiple iterations and actors and this, that. And, so it was just like one of those, like, the story was emailed to me and somebody just sent it in and I read it and I was like, this is a great story. Do you have a screenplay? And he lied and said yes. And of course, he didn't have one, but 1 month later, the screenplay is in. I met Rajkumar Rao at a screening for Masan. This was July 2015 and we started chatting and I said, what are you doing? He said, nothing. He said, what are you doing? I said, there's this one idea, what do you think? He said, let's do it, great. And literally, like, that was July, and by October, we were shooting, like, it all just, like, it happened very quick. It was one of those, like, I wanted to shoot something. I wanted to get on set. I really wanted to shoot something. I hadn't shot something in, like, 3 years. And I think my phantom life had become, because we were producing, and NH10 was happening, Urta Punjab was happening, but I wanted to do something myself. So it was one of those, just, like, jumped into it, shot the film in 17 days, 18 days, just very spontaneous, no script. So, again, technically, I think that's a very fine film. Technically, I think there's a lot of interesting stuff we did with sound and cinematography, and Rajkumar's performance as well is fantastic. But again, I look back at the film, I'm like, things that one could have done had one had more time or taken decisions on certain, sort of like things. So yeah, the crew will know. There's a whole big discussion of, we broke it down and said, okay, forget the script. There's day 1, there's day 2, there's day 3. This is what happens to him on day 1, day 2. And there was like 3 or 4 days where like, yeah, but that's a day 3 incident. Should we pull it up into day 2? No, let's do this. It became one of those things where I think in just the confusion of talking about it, it just like things just sort of like went off. So in hindsight, I'm like, yeah, we should have done that and we should have done that. So it's one of those films.
Right. So I have 2 questions about Trapped. Like one, how does a creator not go mad when there are long waits involved between projects? Because that's a reality of being a director, right? So one, that
it's difficult not to go mad, quite honestly. I think that when directing is not all you live for, but is a lot of what your life sort of like revolves around, is the fact of being on set, because it's a creative process. It's a process of creation. So there's the writing and the actual being on set and making shots and taking shots and then getting into post and doing, and all that's a part of the process, and you miss that. And so I was busy enough at that time because of the producing work at Phantom. But yes, there is that. So I guess you just try. You try and you write and you sort of like ideate and just keep yourself, as busy as you possibly can. Just But sometimes there's also there's a too busy, which also tends to happen as well.
And the question too is it possible to get funding for a Trapped today? Like somebody's out there wanting to make a minimalistic genre film like that. What do you think?
Everything is possible based on the budget you make it at, quite honestly. I think anything and everything. Yes, there are shifts in the industry when it comes to what works and what doesn't work. So yes, broadly we've seen that the indie as we know it, is dead is a very strong word, but we're close enough to sort of like being there. Where unless you've got foreign funding coming in, unless you're really sort of like doing a very, very strong festivals play, it doesn't exist, because there is no ecosystem that exists today for an indie to actually be distributed effectively, to take it to a large audience, to be able to make that kind of money back. I think it's strong in places like Kerala. It is strong there. It's strong in the Tamil industry, for example. Sometimes in the Kannada industry, but it depends really. And like if you see it in that sort of way, Kantara is a indie film. It was made in a very indie spirit. Of course, it broke out and it did things. Or then there's another side to it, which is Natesh Hegde's work, for example, whether it's Pedro or it's Tiger Pond, any of these kind of things. That there is that, but that again is there's a festival play to that. It's a very niche kind of stuff. I think today filmmakers, yes, you can make it Trapped as long as it's made at the right budget, knowing what your audience is and knowing and getting the actor that can. Rajkumar Rao was that correct actor for that film at that moment, where there was enough that I could actually take that film, take it theatrical, and actually make money back on that film. But he wasn't too big where he became bigger than the film, and he wasn't too small where I think it was in that perfect zone that time. But you can. I think the examples of like a Manjumal Boys or so many movies, especially in the South. I think lesser here.
Yeah.
Though I feel the signs not so much from the indie genre, but I feel from strong genres, Stree or Kalki or Crew or any of these films, Munjia. They're all strong genre plays, and they've actually sort of like performed. And I think there's a good sign that there is a chance that you can do things.
No, where I was also coming from is that I don't quite define you guys, when I say you guys, like you, Anurag, etc., as pure indie, because you made films that play to mainstream audiences as well.
Yep.
Like I didn't have to have consumed just world cinema or something to come and see a Vikramaditya film. Sure. I could just be a regular movie watcher. Absolutely. I could still enjoy an udaan or whatever it is. That's what I meant. That space, because I think the indie space is very strong today because they're relying on festival play, and the mainstream, like the whole, like that is okay, that may be shaky or whatever, but there's still people think. I think this space that you guys used to operate in and used to get crowds, that seems to me like a slightly odd space. That's what I was asking about.
It is an odd space, and I was just talking to Anurag a couple of days ago, and I was like, it's time for us to really, maybe it's the sense of we've been comfortable in the space, that we had that space to exist in a world which sort of like straddled what was parallel cinema and commercial cinema, where there was an audience that was going to come in and watch our films in the theatre or on Netflix. But I think that right now the change is in the fact that I think we need to up our game for the genre, the proper big play genre market, in that sense. We're more than capable of doing it, and we love it. It's not even capable, it's like we love it. Like we love the genre kind of stuff, and that's something that I'm watching all the time as my first option. It's not even like oh, I'm not choosing the indies first. I'm not choosing the festival play first. I'm choosing to go see Bahubali first before anything else that sort of like comes out. The audiences also, I think, become far more accepting, and I think, so I grew up at least adoring movies like Die Hard or Back to the Future or Terminator 2 or any of these ones. You could never make them in India at that point in time because you had to put songs in and you had to sort of like, you had to make it. Hollywood calls it the 4 quadrant. We have probably the 6 quadrant. I mean, you have to make it. You had to kind of go across, rich, poor, old, young, whatever. Today you don't. I believe you don't need to. I believe you can go out there and make pure genre, big screen cinema for an audience over here that doesn't need to have the typical things thrown in to be able to make it palatable for them. I think the audience is quite willing and quite coming to something which is not force-fed palatable, but palatable by their terms. And I think that's a great time for us to be able to go out there and do that kind of play. And I think we should.
Yeah, you mentioned Netflix. You've done 2 projects, Sacred Games, which was kind of off and on directed by you, and now you have Control.
There's also AK versus AK.
There's also AK versus AK in the middle, yeah. So let's talk about Control, then go back to your thing. So would you define this as a pure genre project?
Control is a pure genre project. It is a thriller. It's screen life based, which is very interesting. There's been a few screen life films.
Yeah.
There's been Searching, Missing, Unfriended, which are the more popular ones that people.
There was
have
one
seen.
that I forget the name. There's an Indian guy who made it.
There was one called See You Soon.
Yeah,
that
something.
Came out.
No. See You Soon is Mahesh Narayanan. I mean, there was one. Maybe I'm talking.
That's Anish Chaganti. That's Searching.
That's Searching. Right.
That's Searching.
Yeah.
I remember when I saw it for the first time in the theater, I was amazed, and I was like, wow, this is so unique to be able to tell a story, because we are all so used to a medium of consumption that is our phones or our laptops, or doing Zoom calls and doing Google searches and messaging people on text over multiple formats all the time. We're doing it all the time.
Yeah.
And so when I saw Searching, I was like, wow, this is just incredible. This is great. And then Control happened it happened because the producer of Searching, who's Timur Bekmambetov, got in touch via saying that we want to do some screen life projects. Eventually, it didn't happen with them, but I was like, me and Avinash Sampath, the writer, started writing this, and we just liked the story so much. We're like, let's just make this film,
Right.
So we went out.
Like the story as in it's based on something?
No. It's like all this stuff is all pandemic time. You have so much time.
Brainstorming.
Yeah, you have so much time at that time. You're not doing anything. So like, let's chat. And Avi lives in he lives in Amsterdam. So we would do these calls all the time. Came up with this idea, with this story, and then said, let's run with this. And then eventually it was like something which was too nice to, sort of like do. So met Ananya. And then it happened. It happened. Nikhil Dwivedi came on board, produced it. Netflix came on board. But it's a pure straight up thriller. It's about a influencer couple have a nasty breakup. She wants to erase him from her digital past, because that's where all of us live anymore. It's not even real life. It's more about like, I have 60,000 pictures of me looking really nice in Paris, but I don't want this moron sitting next to me. Can you please get him out of this kind of stuff?
Yeah.
That's the film. And it's like she does that, she gets this AI friend, and then things happen.
So I saw the trailer, and it vaguely reminded me of Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. Vaguely, very vaguely. And that's one of my favorite films because it's a unique way of tackling the issue of forgetting somebody. Like erasing, like the word you used. Would you say you've entered a bit of a Charlie Kaufman space here?
I wish.
A bit.
No, I think what's happening over a period of time is I've started to realize that I must just embrace my inner kind of like nerd a little bit more.
Okay.
I've always done that, but I think a little bit more, which is why I think Udaan Lootera started off as being serious, kind of serious-ish in that sort of sense, and from then it's kind of gone, at least the movies, not so much the series, but the movies have gone on to Trapped and Bhavesh and AK versus AK and Control and these kind of things. I just feel that it is pushing the envelope, I think, in a certain sort of way, to be able to make these unique kind of like interesting narratives and interesting stories. But I just feel that there is something, like, I am a bit of a geek, I'm a bit of a nerd. I like to be able to embrace that part and try and do these like really fun, maybe not just discover the fun part.
Right. So we stopped at Trap. What Bhavesh? Let's talk about Bhavesh.
Bhavesh is actually, it's the film that I'm probably the most proud of in terms of, from just a filmmaking perspective. I know it didn't perform. I know that there was, and there are flaws in the film for sure. I mean, it's not a flawless film by any sense. But it always makes me so happy when I meet people, whether it's at anywhere, airports or whatever, that kind of stuff. People walk up and like, and 90% of the time it's like, I love udaan. Sometimes it's I love lootera. But the moment when people say, I love Bhavesh, that really brings a smile to my face, because I feel like, yes, somebody got it. Somebody really felt. It was one of those. It's been a passion project. It was a passion. It's been, and it still is. And I think it came from a place of great anger, and built in, and also my love for all the superheroes. I think just sort of like went in and did that. So yeah, I was very proud of the film when I still am. I love it. Yeah. I think
It's something, yeah.
Yeah, it's something.
Yeah, nothing like it had come in the Indian space before that.
No.
So, yeah. And then AK versus AK.
Again, AK versus, so Avinash Sampath, the same writer of Control, is the writer of AK versus AK. He had sent the story to us when we were at Phantom. I was like, this is great. It's so wild and wacky. And it's felt like a bit of a pipe dream. I'm like, can you really make a film like this today? How's it going to happen? And of course, we tried. Anurag was always the first choice for the director. And then there was other AK choices that we had to kind of, and then it just went off in our heads like, dude, this should just be Anil Kapoor. It has to be Anil Kapoor. It can't be anybody else. I mean, because he also has to have something to prove. And I went to Anil, and I'm like, look, I'm giving you a script. You can throw me out of your house after you read it. You can never invite me back afterwards. I just want you to just read it once and then just react. And he completely got it. He just got it completely. He understood. He got all the subversiveness of it. He got all the making fun of yourself part of that. He got it. I think he was in a great place in his life when he wanted to do it. So again, one of those things which is like, it happened. It was like 20 days of shooting. It's been the most, I think, liberating shoot of my life, in the sense of like, because a lot of that film was shot with just, we rehearsed a lot. We did a lot of like rehearsals. Anurag, Anil, me would sit in a room and just rehearse a lot of those scenes. But when we shot it, it was like cameras rolling for 8 minutes, 9 minutes, 10 minutes. You're just rolling it. And then knowing fully well I'm going to cut it here or there. But I didn't at any point in time shoot this. It's the most unstructured thing that was done. And it was so liberating as a filmmaker to be able to say, I don't have to worry about shot build. I don't have to worry about any of these things. And it really helped me just generally after that. I think just that film really opened up the way. Because before that, again, maybe it's coming from the Sanjay Bhansali school, where you do kind of like look at the fact that everything needs to be slightly structured. Everything needs to have a beginning, middle, and an ending, or a way in. And there's nothing, and that's great. Nothing wrong with that. But yeah, I think AK versus AK just kind of did that.
How do you decide that this is a project that is going to theaters? This is a project that's going to Netflix. I mean, what are the like Control, like AK versus AK, like what are the, I don't know if this is the right word, market forces that decide these things?
I think theatrical is still, while it is changing, I think while it's becoming a little bit more, I'll say experimental, but it will sound if you look at the years. But if you do look at the way the films have slightly shifted in the last couple of years at least, I mean, whether it's a Kalki, for example, a big screen science fiction film doing the kind of numbers that it does, whether it's a Stree, which is doing as a horror comedy, doing the kind of numbers that it's doing, I think there is a way that you can sort of like move on, but I think that's still limited to a certain, because again, theatrical is expensive. Theatrical needs to you have to get into the multiple quadrant and be able to sort of like do that. What I think Netflix does is that it gives you global day and date launch over multiple. I think that is a huge plus for movies of a certain scale, for movies of a certain kind, to be able to say you can go global and you can do that on the same day, and you can have elevated content that is going to be seen as risky for theatrical, but is seen as the perfect fit. And that's why I think that AK versus AK and Control, fit into what is the perfect fit between Netflix and a global audience.
Right.
It's new. It's talking to a younger audience. It's talking to an audience that is out there, that is on their devices, and will get it and get the narrative and understand that kind of stuff, and be very, very immersed into. And I think the same thing happened for both the films.
Right. Now, have you both as a consumer and as a producer and a creator, have you tried to understand the fact that, because this confuses me a lot, the same Netflix is playing these big blockbuster films, right? And there's an audience for them, but the same Netflix also has a Squid Game, which again is consumed by a lot of people in India. I mean, the chatter that entire couple of weeks was about Squid Game and how great it was and binge watch and all that kind of stuff. So, are these the same audience, or are these like separate things? Like one audience watches desi stuff, masala stuff, whatever it is you want to call it. There's another audience that has been weaned on Western content, and is that a different thing?
I guess Netflix is better suited to answer this question. But in my take on it is I think there is, yes. What is lovely is the fact that we are a diverse audience, and I think Netflix serves a diverse audience.
Right.
I think that there are people who, yes, I may not be the kind of person who's watching the local shows but I do watch a lot of the international shows that come in. I do watch a lot of the international movies that come in, and that's me. But my wife in the same house is completely different. She's watching something completely different. She's watching a lot of Korean shows. She's watching a lot of a lot of the Desi shows. She's watching a lot of the younger shows made for teenagers,
right?
You know, for some reason. And I know that distinctly every friend of mine has a different sort of like taste. And I feel that you go to Netflix and you end up finding the fact that you can quench your thirst, by doing that. So if you're into watching Roma, or you're into watching David Fincher's, that kind of stuff, there is that as well.
Yeah.
If you're into watching straight up Bridgerton, Stranger Things, there's that as well. And I think that servicing that it does from a diverse, for a diverse audience is good.
Okay, we look back at AK and AK, AK versus AK, and then let's say, okay, you've done Control now, you're out of it. What's your take on that? Obviously,
on Control.
On Control, yeah.
I think it's a great film.
Yeah. No, I mean, like, what is the space you were when because when you said Trapped, you said you were in an angry phase. What is the thing you were when you did Control?
I think it maybe comes from the fact that, like I was saying, that when AK versus AK being a very liberating kind of like film, I think there was you want to be able to sort of like, again, just be able to experiment with storytelling and go that one step further and saying, how can we experiment and do something new and something fresh, and then yet make it accessible and commercial and fun, and that's what it is. It's all those things. It's fun. So I think that, again, but partly I think sometimes for me, and I get a lot of this, like why is every film of yours different? I'm like, because I like to go and try different things different times. I think if you're going to spend a good year and a half investing yourself into something, into creating something, might as well, why do the same thing you did 2 years ago? Yeah,
right.
Try and do something different. On Control, part of it was, okay, we want to be able to, how do you tell this story? So 80% of the film has been shot on iPhones. It's all been done in a way where you are, and again, this is where the nerdgasm kind of happens. It's like, okay, how do we shoot this film? So it's her and she's talking to an AI character on a computer. Okay, how do you set this up? So there's a laptop, we're shooting her, we're recording the screen of that laptop as she's there. You see her camera is also over there. The AI talking to her is a person who is behind, who's being recorded by a motion capture camera. That is going into Unreal Engine. That is a character we have created. That feed is coming into her computer. They're talking on a Zoom call on that moment. So she's actually talking to an AI character while that's happening. So we've made it completely real for them. Like, look, we got to make it real. Can't have people act in this kind of moment. While that's happening, there is an iPhone recording her at 4K, there's an iPhone recording that at 4K. Every FaceTime call is coming in, that's going out, that's going in. So like, once you do that, it's so much fun to be able to say, okay, let's do this film. Let's push the envelope. Let's talk about technology. Let's talk about how it affects us. Let's talk about relationships. Let's talk about data. Let's talk about, there's a lot of things that the film does talk about. It's a straight up thriller, but there is a lot of depth in the film. There's a lot of things that, and it's a fantastic performance from Ananya.
Right. So I was going to get to that, and we live in a world where people are put in boxes, right? So the minute Vikram Motwane, Ananya Pandey, the names are announced, there's like a bunch of people exploding saying,
Why?
No, they exist. She's there and he's here. What's
Yeah.
happening? It's like, so
No, it happened with Sonakshi as well. When I went Sonakshi's lootera, I was like, oh, you made udaan. How can you send the
You
actress of
sold
Dabang? And you
yourself.
sold herself. She's the actress of Dabang. I'm like, but she's great, and it kind of like she did prove it. I really liked Ananya's work in Gehraiyaan when I saw it. I thought it was fantastic. I thought that there was something here which was really
also that Kho Gaye Hum Kahan. Yeah,
correct.
yeah.
Yeah, she's great in both. And that was something that I thought, okay, here's somebody who has depth, who understands the performance, who has it in the eyes. I think, and as directors, you tend to sort of like look for someone who's not blank in that moment, and you could see that she's in the moment in things that she does. And so when I wrote this and I met her, and I was like, she instantly kind of like connected, and she's worked really hard, and so and she's, I think it's just very refreshing to work with somebody who's just so secure. I think that there's a tendency when we work with insecurities a lot, not just actors. I think there's a lot, and just so refreshing to work with someone so secure. And I think
Right.
that just
Right. So the thing is, when you're faced with that kind of criticism, do you just brush it aside, or do you feel the need to explain that, no, this is why I took Sonakshi, or this is why I took Ananya? Because it's not just the performance, because they come with this baggage of what we've started talking about more recently, which is this nepotism baggage, right? It's like, how do you do you just say, ignore it, it'll go away, because they'll see the performance and is that what you do?
you have to ignore it. At some point in time, there's always going to be noise. There's always going to be chatter. There's somebody. You're not going to please everybody. This is the 21st century of Twitter and Instagram. How do you please everybody? Nobody. I mean, even Shah Rukh Khan gets abused. So it's like, where is, if I'm confident and if she's confident and we're confident about the script and the people who are backing the film are confident, then what do we care about? It's like, just don't read the comments.
Right. Just don't read the comments. Wow, that's easier said than done. Because recently I was speaking to somebody, and they said that they wanted to do something, and I said, like, let's go ahead, and they said, no, but then all your viewers will comment in a negative way. I said, don't read the comments. He said, no, but how can you do that? You can't live in an ivory tower. And I was like, but that's you're getting into a very surreal zone if you start reading comments about what everybody's saying. So I don't know.
But that's the thing, and we've written songs about this years ago. Kuch to log kahenge. So I'm like, that is a part of life.
No, but
Like,
Vikram, that's easier. In a way, that's easy to say, and maybe hear as a song. But in real life, when you put something out as a creator, is that really easy to not want to know what people are saying? Because Control is coming out on Netflix, right? If it's a box office thing, then you're going to get comments in terms of the money that's come back. The trade guys will tell you something. Somebody sitting in a like the financials. There'll be buzz in the industry about how it's, and that's one way of feedback. Now, when you put something out on the ether, the only feedback you're getting is from comments, if I'm right. Like, I mean, yes, your friends, your filmmaker friends, all that might tell you, but the outside stuff is only coming. That's where I'm wondering if it's truly possible to stay away from that. Is one part of you going, I need to like
and this is me personally, I think, and honestly, and this is not because you're sitting here, it's like every time a film of mine comes out, I think the only few people whose reviews, and you're one of the people whose reviews I will actually read. Maybe my unks. Like there are certain people whose reviews, because I respect your love for cinema that will come out. So whether it's a flawed film or not, I will understand where I've gone wrong, where I've not gone wrong. And I think that's okay. And I think over a period of time, yes, in the very early days, you'd be disheartened when there's a bad review. I don't let that affect me anymore. And I think maybe that's experience, maybe that's just closing yourself to the fact that there is going to be negativity, and whether it's right or wrong, sometimes just not having negativity in your life is a better thing than actually being able to sort of like, okay, then try and nitpick as to like what. And maybe that's there when you have enough people around you who are, and you do, and I think I've done that to be able to create a culture where at least I know there's people around me telling me the truth, and then I know the truth is sometimes,
Right.
and it's enough to be able to know it. Then have to. If I've made a mistake or I've made a flaw or I've made something which is not that great, and it's happened, I mean, in the recent past, I know it, so I don't need to go like review and like do that.
But the other beautiful thing about film or any art form is that what you call flaw, unless it's technical and something that can be pinpointed as, okay, this did go wrong, the sound here is a problem, something like that. What's a flaw to you may not be a flaw to me. I might embrace the very same things that you reject and say, oh, I should have done that better. But I'll be like, but Vikram, that's like great, like we cannot come to an agreement on what is the flaw in the creative part of a film. That's something that's very, yeah.
No, absolutely. And I think, look, if I've grown or I've changed, hopefully I've grown. I'm saying I've changed as the filmmaker I was 15 years ago when I started shooting udaan to where I am right now. I've changed.
It's 15 years.
It's been 15 years, yeah. I know.
This is exactly 15 years?
Yeah, 2009 we started shooting, 2010 it released. We're in
2024.
2024.
Right.
So yeah, it's been 15 years since...
wow, congratulations. Is there I don't know, what is it, like silver or something like that? I don't know what it is. But it's a big journey. Congratulations.
It is a big journey.
Yeah,
so yes, that's why when... Sometimes even in those 2 years when you've gone off from an ideating to an actual film finish, you realize that where I started and where I am, I'm a totally different person now than even when I started shooting this film. And then maybe had I done this all over again, but you're like, there is a moment in time when you agreed to sort of like do this, and then you did it, and you signed the contract and with yourself, and you decided to go and do it, and that's fine. That's who you are. And now you're a new person, and you're going to sort of like go on and do something else. And I think you come to terms with it, and it's easier to not kind of beat yourself up over.
Yeah, I think beating yourself up, but just tell me, out of curiosity, if you can, one thing that Vikram Motwane was in 2009 that he isn't today.
On a positive, I'm less anxious.
Okay.
Than I was. I mean, not so much udaan. Lootera was a very, very anxious process for me to shoot.
You're saying anxious about your films you're trying to make?
Anxious about films, anxious about
life itself.
About life itself, anxious about just like, oh, is it perfect? Is it great? Is it not? I have to get it perfectly right on the page, and everything has to be like, minute. And I've learned to delegate a lot more. I've learned to be able to sort of like be a lot more, and that helps me because it helps me be objective. Sometimes you get lost in and that's one thing that I've learned is sometimes you get so lost in the subjectivity of a film, you cannot see the wood from the trees. You can't see. So I've learned now, let's be objective. Let's delegate things. Let's actually sort of like come in at stages where I need to come in on a script. It's like someone's done the work. Let me come in, not kind of like nitpick every single word and then sort of like do my stuff. And whether it's there, whether it's on edits, and though I'm very invested in every part of the filmmaking process, I've learned to sort of like do that. I've learned to be able to, to do it. The flip side of that is like, then you question yourself, do I really care anymore? But then I guess you have to just...
Well, you can't unbe who you are right now.
Exactly.
Yeah, so if this is what you are, then that's what. You can't like force yourself to be somebody else.
No, exactly.
Yeah, but
I've had to, look, I've had a very tough relationship with writing. Just generally. I think that wrote udaan, co-wrote Lootera with Bhavani, and I spent so much. And then there was a moment in time before they started. Actually, there was, I think, 2007, 2008, where I was just, there was no work. And the question, what do you do? I was like, I wrote like some 4 screenplays in that year itself to be able to say, okay, here's my kind of practice coming out. But that time I used to smoke, so it was very easy to sort of like sit in one place, smoke, and just write. And then I quit smoking, and I quit smoking just before udaan started shooting, like 4 months before udaan started shooting. So, and then when I had to write Bhavesh after that, I was struggling to write it because I was so used to this idea of smoking. So it was a struggle. What would take me 2 weeks to write a screenplay suddenly took me 3 months to write a screenplay, because it was like, oh, you sit and write 5 words, and then you have to go to the fridge to go and get yourself a snack. Then you kind of come back. And I had this relationship with writing, which became this sort of like love-hate kind of thing. So that's why that's part of the entire thing. Then I would start to delegate. I'd get a co-writer. I'd get somebody on board who I can then be objective about it. So because I had to force myself into that sort of situation, that happened, and it's for the better. But now my relationship with writing is improved.
Is
again.
easier?
Yeah,
probably because you're not that tough on yourself anymore.
Yeah.
Regarding control, what was the toughest thing? Was it the technology?
Post-production.
Post-production.
Literally, it was a film that took 16 days to shoot and 16 months on post-production.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah, it's been a very... So the film, because it's on... So, I mean, if I could show you my editing timeline, it's because you've got... So the source is the screen, which has got everything on it. But now in that screen, we're going to zoom in, we're going to zoom out. We need high-res footage of this character and the AI and that comment which is there on Instagram and that on that and that on that. All this stuff has to be created again for high resolution sort of like stuff. So even once you lock the edit, it goes into VFX, and VFX is then taking your source footage, putting together and because we also have to recreate everything. It's not Instagram. It's that we have to create our own version of Instagram, our own version of Twitter, our own version of YouTube. You have to now go and start designing those things from scratch. So our edit timelines, and editors will understand, had 10 layers of video, which are just things that are just being put together, for that. So that process took a lot of time because you don't realize it. Like you're watching the screen, you're watching a YouTube video, and you're seeing, so there's the footage you have to shoot, then there's the main kind of thing, then there's the number of comments, this thing. Every single individual comment has to be written, thought of by you and your team. Every single suggestion that comes on the site has to be written, thought of by your team, cleared by legal, all those kind of things. There's a lot of work that goes into a film like this that you don't even realize. It seems very easy, like, oh, this is easy, or just screen recording. It's not. There's a lot that goes in.
Right.
But that's the fun of it. That's the geekiness of it.
Yeah. So what's next?
Indira's Emergency, which is ready. And there's a series called Black Warrant, which is shot and ready.
Now, when you started Andolan Pictures, the word Andolan is loaded. What was the revolution that you were trying to?
So that's what I tell myself. So we're going to create. Well, so it's two-handed. I grew up in a business family in the sense that Chicago radio, there would be, I don't know, loudspeakers and that kind of stuff. There was a little hidden history of my family, which was told to me much later when I was growing up, saying that my family had produced one film at one point. That film was called Andolan. And my grandfather was the producer of that film. The film it was 1949 they shot it, 1951 it came out. It was about the freedom struggle. It tanked. It was Kishore Kumar's debut film as a lead actor.
How fun.
Yeah. And the film failed because no one wanted to see the freedom struggle 4 years after the freedom struggle. And this was told to me very casually by my dad. Oh, by the way, you produced a film.
What age did you realize this?
I was like in my 20s.
Okay.
So
that nobody talked about it.
Nobody talked about it.
Okay.
And then I realized, so I spoke to my grandmother. I said, why didn't you? And my grandfather passed away before I was born, so I could never ask him. So she was like, no, he was crazy about films, and I inherited a lot of his film books, and I've seen that he was actually into. And supposedly they had, the family had. And he was into documentaries, so he would actually go and shoot all the AICC sessions way back, and this is like in the 40s. Anyway, so all that is, I don't know where all that footage is anyway. So Andolan is yes, part of me is like, yes, it's a revolution, but it's also a tribute to that one film which kind of exists.
Right.
Yeah,
so Control is also
an Andolan production. So was AK versus AK. And
right.
Things. Hopefully, yeah.
Yeah, and now that you've decided to be calmer, less anxious, do what comes your way, is there like any way we can see you, because this question comes from me because you kept talking about Kalki a lot and Kantara a lot. Is there one part of you that wants to make this big ass?
100%. I feel that's the way. I think, and going back to literally what our own heroes have done, if you look back at what a Spielberg has done or what a Lucas has done, or making the genre stuff and saying the things you want through a genre lens is something that we have, like I'm saying, and what I said, we haven't the opportunity to do before this because it's always been about having to sort of like make it Bollywood. But I think that separation has managed to come today. So that for me is exciting, I think. And I think that's the only way to go, quite honestly.
Which is to make these big movies?
Anything that's worthy of an audience buying a ticket or an audience clicking to be able to go and watch a film. That excitement that's going to get created, whether it's for a streaming service or whether it's for the theatre, it has to be exciting. It has to be something that you're just like, and I think that in between, I think there was a moment where one lost that a little bit, and I think that in the end of the day, that's kind of brick and mortar. Yeah, that's brass tacks. Like that is that, and I think I'm excited by it. I'm excited by the potential of what can be here, and I would love to do something big screen, theatrical, Kalki like.
Right.
Tentpole.
Yeah, because the thing is, of all the films that you've done, the biggest in terms of, I don't know about the budget, but at least the biggest in terms of scope for me was Bhavish. Because that's like a very big idea contained in a genre film. Yeah. Like it subverted the idea of what a superhero film is, what it can do, like the ordinary taking over the extraordinary, all that kind of stuff. I've always thought, what would that be like had it been made like at a bigger level? But I think Bhavish works precisely because it's at that, I wouldn't say indie, but at that level, whatever, you know.
It is. We used to jokingly
that
call it
scrappy, you know, or DIY almost, though it's not a
cottage
DIY.
industry.
Cottage
We used to
industry.
call it the cottage industry superhero.
That's a great name. Yeah.
That's what the working title the reference used to be. So always like, I should always tell my cinematographer and people, I said, he's a cottage industry superhero. So everything, it can't have people thinking like, how did he do this? No, you have to know exactly. You have to understand. You have to like join the dots and think, that's how he did it.
Yeah.
Or that's where the mask idea came from, or that's where those things came from. Like there has to be. No, but I'm just recently saw like I don't know if did you see the new Alien film, Romulus?
Yeah.
That's great. I loved it. You know, I was like, wow, and it's so cool that you can sort of like make that, which is almost sort of like harking back to Ridley Scott's original vision of it, but do it in today's age, and so it's modern, and yet it's there, and yet it's theatrical, and yet it's like fun, and yet it's creepy. I think that there's a lovely little thing to be.
Yeah, it works as nostalgia. It also works in the present day.
Exactly.
You know, so it's like because at least a bunch of people on the screen were like really young, and I'm pretty sure they had never seen any of the earlier aliens on the big screen. So you know, it was kind of fun. So anyway, don't be a stranger. Keep coming out with more films. Sooner.
I'm in I think, and again, this is again Anurag and me sort of like chatting in one day saying that, yeah, why are we taking so long? So you look back at the time, and Hitchcock used to make 2 films a year.
Yeah.
What's stopping us? Nothing. So yeah, I'm on it.
I'm on it. All right. Look forward, and all the best for Control.
Thanks, buddy.
Hola! Your train vacation to Malaysia starts from rupees 24,999 only with GT Holidays, South India's #1 travel brand.